Sia lodato Gesù Cristo e avanti con Maria. Carissimi, vengo a darvi appuntamento dopo questa pausa estiva indimenticabile nella quale ci hanno acquisito Piccola Nazareth, ma noi siamo sopravvissuti perché ci accompagna la Madonna per un appuntamento imperdibile. Domenica 6 ottobre a Milano alle ore 14:30 ci ritroviamo, per quanti lo vorrete, per un momento di preghiera. L'ultimo nostro raduno è stato a giugno a Firenze, una lunga estate che adesso volge al termine. Vi aspettiamo con la corona del rosario in mano, noi il popolo dei rosarianti, a Milano domenica 6 ottobre, prima domenica del mese dedicato alla Madonna del Rosario. Reciteremo insieme il Rosario, accoglieremo la statua della Madonna, benediremo tutti i bambini e faremo la consacrazione alla Madonna e la recita della supplica alla Madonna del Rosario di Pompei. Domenica 6 ottobre, Milano, avanti con Maria e a presto.
Praise be Jesus Christ, and may you all have a good and holy day, dear children, listening to Radio Domina Nostra in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Welcome back to our morning segment, Saints and Coffee. Oggi è mercoledì 18 settembre. The Church celebrates, in the traditional liturgical calendar, the evocative penitential, an austere yet also intense liturgy of the ember days of September, in the transition now near between summer and autumn. The two transitions considered crucial are from spring to summer, when wheat is harvested to make bread, and from summer to autumn, when grapes are gathered to produce wine. Bread, wine make the Eucharist. The ember days are still relevant because our society is no longer rural, but I believe that, for example, deciding to omit them in the new order, I hope I'm not shocking anyone here, was a good idea in my opinion, because it exists but is not mandatory. People no longer follow the rhythms of the earth, no longer follow rural rhythms, even though today there is a slow return to that, especially in other countries around the world, much less so in Italy. In France, this is very widespread, whereas Paris with its suburbs and outskirts has violent issues. But then, if you leave, let's say, the urban perimeter of Paris, you gradually discover small towns. France is full of small towns, unlike Italy, which also has small villages, especially in the Tuscan Emilian Apennines, Lucania, and so on, the Monice area. However, France has very tiny villages where you find people, even graduates, even specialists, and so on, who then go to work in the fields and return to a relationship with nature, with the earth. Return there is. All right, what is good is they have the ember days, which remind us that nature is the work of God. Today we see this version of Mother Earth as desired by the false church, this naturalistic Gnosticism, this Gnostic pantheism, where Mother Earth is fine, because even St. Francis, our sister Mother Earth, but understood as a work that comes from God, and thus we invoke God to give us the fruits of the earth, which specifically are the wheat, and in this case here the grapes, the harvest. So these are the 4 ember days, but today is also St. Joseph of Cupertino, the patron saint of all students. I don't know if seminarians have exams these days. They can invoke him. He was the flying friar. He flew. He had this surprising mystical gift. He really had the notarial acts preserved in Naples of this friar, who, while celebrating Mass, would rise from the ground, and not just a little, he flew. He didn't have the simple gift of levitation, like just rising a bit from the ground like other students. No, he flew. He flew up to the ceiling, you see. He flew up to the ceiling. So once his superior said to him, "Brother Giuseppe, really a special leap, St. Joseph of Cupertino." His superior said to him, "Brother Giuseppe, there's too much sensationalism here, so you can't do anything unless I give you permission, all right?" Once, while he was celebrating Mass, he rose and flew and wanted to attach himself to the ceiling. It wasn't that he was attached to the ceiling. He was on the ceiling side. Look, I'm not making this up. It seems unbelievable, but this is Roman Catholicism. This is Roman Catholicism. And so the friars, worried, said, "Come down, come down." "No, no, I wait for my superior's permission." Since the superior on that occasion wasn't in the convent, they had to rush to call him. And he stayed up there because he wouldn't move until his superior gave him obedience. So the most beautiful lesson there isn't that he rises from the ground, right? But obedience, we need to talk about obedience. Because with the Catholic leadership, the issue of obedience is a very serious problem. Anyway, we invoke St. Joseph of Cupertino so that we too learn to fly. Flying high, flying towards God, flying towards the sky, flying towards paradise. Speaking of flying, I remind you that the 6th of October is approaching, and the prayer meeting in Milan at the NH Congress in 𝐸𝐵. In the morning, there will be confessions, and then in the afternoon at 2:30 begins this spiritual event. Very beautiful. There will be the priests of the Marian Priestly Society, there will be the rosary led by me, the welcoming of the Madonna, then the consecration to the Madonna, the supplication, because on the 6th of October, the first Sunday of October, we will all together make the supplication to the Madonna of Pompeii, the blessing of the children, to whom we will give to each child attention. Children up to what age? Then I'd like to meet the elder. I feel like a kid. And children means up to 12 years old, no more indeed. Always interesting to say, I don't know if you all agree that 12 years is still fine for the boy. That's my opinion. Because for the girl, 12 years is already an advanced age. That's based on my pastoral experience when I taught catechism to children. The female universe has processes of psycho-spiritual and ritual maturation. A psycho-existential process where a 12-year-old girl is one thing, but a 12-year-old boy is still essentially a child. The girl at 12, no, but the boy at 12 is still a child. This is the experience that parents can tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, we will bless the children from 0 to 12 years old and give them a small keepsake. Then there will be the supplication and the blessing of the children. Then you see what an intense afternoon. Then there will be the Mass celebrated by Father Johannes with the homily by Don Errico. After the Mass, the Eucharistic procession will be quite quick, as Brother Celestino will lead it. Between leaflets, as I sometimes joke if we call them, the first time he led the procession, he was running, so I pulled his habit from behind, slowly, let's say slowly. And then after the Eucharistic blessing, which Brother Celestino will always do. After this, we say goodbye, we part ways, and it's always lovely to see how we leave these prayer meetings. I don't know how many of you will come. There's a coach leaving mine that departs from Emilia-Romagna. I wanted to give you some news because it's very important to make it known. A coach that departs from Emilia-Romagna. This coach has the following stops. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. The following stops. Departure at 8 o'clock, obvious 6th of October, from Bologna, western outskirts area, Borgo Panigale, stops. So, Bologna, San Lazzaro, Modena North, Reggio Emilia, Parma, Fidenza, Fiorenzuola, and if there are requests, also at other motorway toll booths towards Milan. The cost is €10 for those under 14 years old and €35 for others, including travel insurance. I think it's a good amount considering that independently between petrol and motorway tolls, you definitely spend more. If you're interested, you can write as soon as possible to the following number 351. I asked the team to send this to the director 351-730-7533. I feel like the one from the draw 351-730-753. 3. What else do I have to do? All right, here it is, so take advantage of it, whether you are in Milan, Romagna, or even further north. And then on that occasion, as I've already told you, we'll present my new books, my latest editorial efforts. Last night, we did episode 4 of my book, The False Church and Its Destiny. Thank you for listening. Here it is, the volume available in Milan with a beautiful cover. The book's from 2017. I decided with the team not to touch it. Leave it as it is so you can read it and say, look, Domina Nostra from 2017 hasn't changed anything. The only thing is that I don't call Bergoglio a false pope yet, but I do talk about a false church. When I wrote it, there was no sentence, just removal as parish priest. In 2018, with this book's release, came 2 excommunications. The book will be available in Milan. Last night we did an episode, pretty interesting, challenging, but truly invaluable, was last night's episode titled The Primacy in the Church, the Word and the Organist. You can find it available on the playlist of Radio Domina Nostra. And the other book, here it is, The Eagle and the Sun, the first volume of commentary on the Gospel of John. I'm growing, this was a dream in the drawer, and this first volume explores the first 5 chapters of the Gospel of John, with the prologue taking up half the book, because the prologue, as books say, is an overture. I write at the end, we listened to the melody, we didn't read, we sang the prologue, because the prologue is sung. Here, these 2 volumes are available. Today is Wednesday, and I remind you that tonight is the Biblical Wednesday, a precious appointment for the small remnant, because it's wonderful to listen to the voices of the confreres. I was the one who insisted with them so they could do it, and they agreed. There is the catechesis by Don Enrico Bernasconi on the Sunday after Pentecost, next Sunday, at 9 o'clock in the evening. Here's the post. Share it at 9 o'clock in the evening on the YouTube channel of Radio Domina, where I invite you to subscribe. Always give likes, as they are essential. I remind you that the demolition work is now completed in the piccolonazareth Center. Now we are finally focused on the construction work, waiting for the permits, which seem, however, we are in God's hands, but always, even when you experience document simulation, obstructions, obstacles, always say we are in God's hands, because it would seem that the permits should be granted to us, and it will be built. There it'll be done in that lovely place. We'll see how to handle it. What I recommend to you, however, is to keep helping us. We really need it. Truly need it. The summer is over now. We're getting ready for this, and this is the path we take with the little one. I never want to force anyone's hand, because I want to bring you joy, but not because, while I'm here, managing the nun's house, and there's no house for the seminarians, and we don't know where Brother Celestino should live, and we're unsure about the structure there. I go and invest a couple of €1,000 to gather in Milan. This is Domina Minutella. If not, please canonize me in life. Well, understand that while I have all this here, I pay for the Congress in Assago, not €1,000. I can't tell you the amount, but it's not €1,000. This is an act of faith, because one might say, wait a moment, I have these problems here. For now, gatherings can't be held. But no, because we would be giving up. We'll see each other in Milan. But it's there that you need to understand that the work goes on, and Domina succeeds well in the work, if you help. All right, to cut a long story short, there's the international bank account number with the current account. We don't need to chat. You just need to help us, really help us, more than ever. Because the situation isn't simple right now with the closure of the center, the demolition of Vicola Nazareth. And so you can also make the payment through, as they say at the post office, it seems, they tell me, that it's easier where you live. If you live in Naples, Bari, or Palermo, I'm not sure if it's any easier at the post office or even in Rome. Perhaps in the north, yes, or in small towns, it's not needed. All right, here's the postal current account. You can, if you wish, help us. Tomorrow night, we continue catechesis. From my book on the Apocalypse, The Symphony of the Lamb, this volume, along with The False Church and Its Destiny, The Eagle and the Sun, I've mentioned it, as the book's title suggests in the commentary on the Gospel. The Eagle and the Sun, the Eagle and John, the Sun and the Logos, the Word of God. You can ask the Secretary of Our Lady. This evening, Domina, we are doing this very beautiful catechesis. And then on Saturday, don't forget the appointment with the little big heroes of faith. Allow me to wish a happy birthday to one of my collaborators whom many of you know, because she teaches catechism on Radio Domina Nostra, and she's the wife of the organist, you see? I jokingly call them Sandra Mondani and Raimondo Vianello, because it's lovely to see them bickering with each other. They argue, but it's a loving argument. All couples should learn from them, so I'll have Maricetta and Tonino do a series of catechesis, who are the children's catechist and the organist, to explain how to argue with love. They argue. And Tonino, it's really nice to see when Maricetta says something to him, and it's as if Maricetta isn't there at that moment. They know how much I love them. Happy birthday, Maricetta. Think about it. Tonino started playing in church when I was the parish priest. All right, now I say, look, soon you'll have to play if everything goes well for us in the Vatican. At St. Peter's. And well, he has already played at major gatherings, so it's a great satisfaction for the locals. I wanted to point out that the canteen there today is exceptionally at 4 o'clock, not at 5:30. Spread the word. Let's go to today's episode. Hear, hear. Listen to this. We're back to talking about the Synod. After a summer where, remarkably, there was no mention of the Synod, we're back to discussing the Synod. At last, I would say. However, the title of today's episode is The Synod, Italian-Style Comedy. Italian comedy, you know? It's truly typically Italian, the comedy. Those films like the ones by Alberto Sordi or Paolo Villaggio, you know? I don't know. These like Toto. It's the Italian-style comedy where there's a plot you lose sight of because you're so entertained following the film. Here, the Synod is an Italian-style comedy. Now I'll say why. It was announced with great fanfare that next October, in a few weeks, the second phase of the Synod begins. Who wants this Synod? Who likes this Synod? Who cares about this Synod? Nobody. Everyone's fed up with this Synod. Everyone. It's that enthusiasm, that involvement which is purely media-driven. Why do the media do this? Look, there's no doubt that among the horns of the beast appearing in the Apocalypse, the sharpest one is that of the media. The media have the ability to tell what is not true. I felt it myself. I am the priest who kidnaps women. I try the fisherman at sea who asked me a few days ago, but why? Violent, the maidens, what must I endure? For the sake of the media, because the cursed Freemasons arm the television and newspaper editorial offices and destroy you, or try to destroy you. I've lived it myself. I don't give a damn about newspapers and television. If it were up to me, they should all go and dig like they deserve. Get calluses on their hands to save their souls. Because you see, all those who have slandered me will have to answer to God because they have torn my robe. Who will they find at Paradise's gate if they don't repent? Want to know? My Father. My Father stands right there in front. Because he was testifying this to the pioneers. They knew how to play the card of slander defamation, censorship, because the prayer meetings, the gatherings we hold with thousands of people don't exist. They don't talk about them. The important things we achieve do not exist. They turn on the spotlights instead. There is no way to show on Radio Domina that, for example, we have shown images of parents coming. Clearly, not everyone in a family can be happy when there's a vocation. The family can also be divided. It's expected. Jesus said it in the gospel. There can be a father who is happy and a mother who ignores you for life, or vice versa, or the brother, the sister. There's nothing to be done. It's wonderful if the whole family participates, but it's not so common. So, I brought the parent, made a video with the parents where they said, "We're here." It didn't help at all. Until March, journalists from Channel 5 or Channel 4 came to Lugano to set up an ambush chapters. But serious journalism doesn't involve a prior agreement, a mutual understanding. What are we? Beasts? Animals? In Italy? The Italy of Mattarella? The Italy of institutions like the government, like the chamber, the Senate? Does it foresee high-level journalism like Mediaset and Rai, targeting a poor soul by telling lies? There's no way. I know what the media are right here on my skin. And I tell you that the media are capable of altering reality and telling lies. A statesman on a global level who is saving, let's say, Christian culture is seen as a tyrant and vice versa. A stateswoman who seems destined to become who knows what savior of humankind will be a land-grabbing, bourgeois, bloodthirsty war. Let's give an example. No names. Censorship kicks in. Christ, censorship kicks in then. Here, in the media, they talk about a beloved synod, an important synod for this 2023 to 2024. A synod that everyone wants, a synod that everyone likes, and people seeking this reality and people wanting it, but it's not true at all. And that's the media, Italian-style comedy. The indifference of the common people towards the synod is the great victory of the Holy Spirit against the Antichrist, against Bergoglio's false church. Now more than ever, people couldn't care less about this synod. So much so that, as we mentioned, we were among the first to report it, yet no one gives us credit. Because as we said about those types of media, we also talk about the media. Bergoglio together with, for them we do not exist. What did I say? From the survey conducted in the summer, 85% of people said this synod doesn't interest us. Get rid of it. And so, with Mediaset Italian, they changed. Now they've changed the strategy. They are incredibly sophisticated in their techniques. Change strategy. What is the strategy now? The strategy is to no longer be boastful, as I'd like to tell you. Do you remember how the synod was last year? The synod, and all these cardinals facing the televisions, the synod here, the synod there, we must do, we must say, etc. Then it went badly, as I told you yesterday, because with the publication of Fiducia Supplicans, the African episcopate practically decided not to. Because the discontent you see about Bergoglio, the media don't say it. They make people believe that Pope Francis is loved. It's just Francis. With his Masonic pals, the workshop of our own that manages the power of the Vatican. In the Vatican, not the Church, as it holds no power but the cross and gospel, as said last night. Bergoglio is actually alone. Nobody notices him now. Nobody notices Bergoglio. They got it. 85% of folks don't want. Now, the African continent does not follow Bergoglio's magisterium, because that's how it is. He signed off on his trust. It's not just a document from Cardinal Fernandez. He signed it himself. Even so, the African continent, well, all of it, except for these Maghreb regions, which are Francophone, thus having a culture paradoxically, despite Islam, very close to French secularism. So Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, there are small Catholic communities of a few bishops who are actually pleased with the trust plea, yet they live in seclusion. All the other African episcopates, and not only them, because the Polish one is scattered like a leopard's spots around the world, have said, look, we will not follow, this is very serious, we will not apply this document. In the meantime, after Bergoglio's statement in Singapore that all regions are equal, the Emeritus Bishop of Chicago, Chaput, writes a letter to Bergoglio and says, correct what you said and do it in time, because if not, you are an apostate. Not going well for him. On the other hand, on average, for the media, for the televisions, for the newspapers, with a few exceptions, Pope Francis is the unreachable Pope Francis. Nothing at all. At this moment, the approval ratings for the so-called Pope Francis are at rock bottom. The Synod is just a decoy. Now, as I was telling you, when we return to the Synod, 85% of the people don't want this Synod. They don't care at all. They've changed strategy then. Pope Francis has announced a penitential liturgy. Now the show begins. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. A penitential liturgy. So what's the purpose of the penitential liturgy? Need anything? Ask for forgiveness. Forgive God. Ask God for pardon. Certainly, the penitential liturgy is for asking God's forgiveness. For what? For the sins. These are the sins, those against God and against others. Then, the list of sins for which forgiveness will be sought from God was directly drawn up by Pope Francis. Enjoy yourselves, because the third to last one is simply comical, like Fantozzi. Let's see what these sins are. The sin against peace. The sin against creation, against indigenous peoples, and against migrants. What does it mean? What does it mean to ask God's forgiveness for the sin against migrants? What should I ask forgiveness for? Do I have to take him home? Before setting an example, you should do it yourself, Pope Francis, as you left them there on the streets in the middle of the Vatican, sleeping in sleeping bags, urinating around St. Peter's Square without the authorities intervening. Go to St. Peter's Square, there's the dark dome, the sky almost always overcast, the seagulls sneezing, making an ugly screeching sound. And the smell, especially go and notice the smell there. Why don't they notice it at home? Why, though? If there are policies that aim to safeguard the right not to immigrate, there is a right not to attention. There is a duty of governments to ensure that people do not emigrate. It's not just me saying this. It was said by John Paul II and Benedict XVI. There is a right to emigrate, but is perhaps always subsequent to a right not to emigrate. Why emigrate? Because there's war here. Why emigrate? Poverty is here. Policies must ensure that neither war nor poverty exists, so that Africans do not die in the Mediterranean. There is no trace of all this. So it's an entirely, as you see, stubbornly ideological view, where they involve the sacred things of God to play their wicked cards. Agree? So, if there's a politician, for example, an African, or an elder, for instance, this is once again a stance against the African bishops. Bergoglio can't stand African bishops. That's what I think. In fact, in the Vatican, there aren't any of color, but notice, for me, Bergoglio can't stand them. They made it clear, we don't bless gay couples, meaning marriage. In Latin America, like Uruguay, they have weddings, not blessings. There are African bishops who have written documents. You might not know this, but I do because I stay informed. Pastoral documents in which they invite their dioceses to intervene, to act in a thorough and risky manner. Why doesn't Bergoglio ever talk about the business behind it? Isn't that the real sin that's not mentioned? To see the level we've reached. They were wrong to strip me of the robe, because I've been speaking for years, ever since Bergoglio said, the devil makes pots without lids. If I still had the robe, I probably wouldn't say certain things. Why doesn't Bergoglio mention the business that African bishops repeatedly refer to when they say, write to their parish priests, religious communities, friars, nuns engaged on the frontier, make sure our faithful do not leave. Don't leave, especially the young ones, because here we build the future. Don't leave because there's a business that benefits this way. Why does Bergoglio, the excellent Pope Francis, not talk about it and only speak of the sin against migrants? Perhaps he includes that too. Isn't it more important to say there's a right not to emigrate? And then his shocking statement on the plane. Another blasphemy, if you ask me. They asked him what he thinks. Look, I find this extremely serious. I won't reveal anything. I want to broadcast that. I don't know if you're aware, interviewed about the American political elections where Kamala Harris is running for the Democrats and Donald Trump for the Republicans. A Donald Trump who has suffered a second attack. Let me remind you, and Bergoglio was asked what he thinks about it. Know his reply? Reflect, that's how he replied. Trump is against immigration, and Kamala Harris is in favor of abortion. Choose the lesser evil. Choose the lesser evil. He's a Jesuit. The Jesuits are diabolical. Some exceptions, naturally, diabolical. This one we're talking about equates the killing of an innocent in the womb, because that's what it is, to Donald Trump, who, for other reasons, builds walls and doesn't want immigrants at home. Are they exactly the same thing to equate? For shame, yes. Got it? All right, so particularly if you, the sin against peace, the sin against creation, against indigenous populations, against migrants, the sin of abuse, wretches, cursed you are, why don't you write to 𝐓𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻 here? Miserable, cursed, miserable, cursed. They write about sin against abuses, and then Father 𝐓𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻 stands at the altar. Say the Mass. He takes the salary. And Zuppi still has him applying mosaics in the churches of Bologna. Shame. Synagogue of Satan. The sin against abuses, as they say. The sin against abuses is Don Minutella, who kidnaps women for them. Not true. Father 𝐓𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐻 did not perform satanic rituals with the poor nuns who encountered the problem. Right against abuse. What do we say about 𝐥'𝐞𝐯? Bergoglio knows what we're referring to. He is a bishop whom he has protected at all costs. Of other bishops he insisted on at all costs. There is currently an investigation. There would be, I'm not an expert, an investigation against or concerning the prefect of bishops, an important one that Bergoglio wanted in the Vatican and who would have covered for them. It doesn't matter if the wrongdoing is done by one of our own. They will be protected. But we ask for forgiveness for the sin against abuses. If you haven't understood that these are incarnate demons, you'll lose your soul. Together, you'll lose your soul if you pretend not to get it. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that. Cornet from Barbara Tampieri. All right. Apart from the fact that many have asked why it was never done even once during the broadcast at 𝐥'𝐞𝐝, at Domina, and at Sodalizio, I've wondered that myself, I must say the truth, because we have to work for... Be careful, because if these collateral forces censor us too, it's over. I want to be clear. I expected there to be a hint. Not that I'm saying they should have told Ferdinando Cornet, why don't you join the fellowship? Far from it. These are things we need to discuss among ourselves. However, during the episode, as many have told me, I then don't know how to respond. But how is it possible? Aren't they on our side? Why don't they mention it even once? And I don't know what to answer, dear friends. I don't know what to say. What I can tell you is that there is certainly discontent, and I announce that all attempts to disrupt this priestly discontent, to prevent it from joining Don Minutella's work, come precisely from Satan, whoever carries them out, friends, travel companions, and enemies. I don't know if you agree, because unity is strength. Why do they have to leave and then keep to themselves? Why don't we join them? Don't like Don Minutella? What the heck? Why is it that you all are always better, yet the problem is always Don Minutella? And then bear with him, for he too will die one day. He was the first, formed the partnership, organizes national and international gatherings, traveled around the world, gathered thousands of... What other alternative are you looking for? It's the work of the devil. It's the work of the devil, no matter where it comes from. I'm not saying you can argue that it is, and then absolutely not even once, because then our people who follow other channels will be disappointed. I must say, to be honest, it's not that I'm claiming it's me, it's not me. The event has already happened. I'm just commenting, and I'm trying to calm things down by saying maybe Tampieri forgot to suggest what Dom Nutella thinks, because people during the show, which is very nice because Don Fernando is a very knowledgeable priest whom I would hope to meet if he wants. I'm completely available, even in private, because then people start imagining things. Like, surely they've agreed, he'll come to Milan, but who will come to Milan if there's no agreement? If in the episode I'm not mentioned even once, then I say, it's not like Tampieri did it on purpose. I'm not saying that we would meet, don't misunderstand. I'm saying that if it continues like this, with the next priest who gets excommunicated, we go with the specific crew to interview him, to talk about it, it's entirely possible that there could be some sort of common platform with the association. What now? For goodness sake, I say there can be a confederation, meaning that one doesn't necessarily have to join the partnership. All the priests who gradually leave, of course, but at least let's not tear each other apart, and if possible, let's acknowledge a domain. Otherwise, I assure you there's a lot of people who get upset because they write to you, Father. But is it possible that friendly channels talk with Don Cornet and you don't exist, because not even once do they mention you? It's a prior agreement. I don't think so, and why I can't tell you. For me, there's a preternatural origin because it's clear that the devil doesn't want us to unite with me, because if we unite with me, we become a force. If Don 𝐶𝐝, Don Cornet joins us, what do they lose? Nothing. Maybe there's a wrong idea of me. I was talking about it yesterday with my people. I mean, there can be confreres of the sodality who have the opposite problem, because I never call them, I hardly ever hear from them, because we are equals. The priests of the fellowship can testify. I don't want to act like a pseudo-bishop or pseudo-pope, as they make it seem, because those who are with me can see that's not the case. Anyway, closing, let's move on to the other sins. The sin against women, family, and the young. Attention, the sin against the family, the cursed wretches. You were the ones with Amoris and Letizia who destroyed it, the image of the family. See how hypocritical they are? For seeking forgiveness, people fall in love again with Pope Francis, because at this moment, the sin, now comes the most beautiful one. The most beautiful sin comes now. What I do? Because he looks at me shocked. I've confessed the sin. Celestino, I've pulled the dogma of the cunning on you. To him, the dogma of the immaculate. Be careful, be careful. The dogma of the real presence. Why will we ask forgiveness for the sin of using doctrine as stones to throw against others? Thank you. The sin of doctrine, and well, the Celestina. But I also want to say sorry for these ways that for you from the north are always a bit. But I want to tell you that love is repaid with love. That is, we must play on the same level. There's Italian comedy, so I know how to do it. Sin of doctrine. But what does sin of doctrine mean used as stones to throw against? Do you understand to what level of senselessness these people have reached? And still at Unacume, they call him Pope. A person told me from the north, who came here for the occasion of the Sentinels' gathering celebration, that they spoke with their parish priest, gave him the book, he apparently read it, and then the parish priest said this: I understand, I ask you not to distance yourself. I even felt tenderness for the parish priest. And then he added, I cannot do it, because I would lose the people. And I said, look, what an act full of pastoral love. No, Father, let me finish, because he has gathered the people to drink, and I wouldn't know how to survive. These are the noble reasons why the priests of Italy, from the Dolomitic Alpine Arch to the temples of Agrigento, do not come forward. Trust me, this is it. This is it. Hold tight. And this scenario is sad because we're at the end of our rope. The priests ascend from the altar to quote Pope Francis at Melsa. The sin of using doctrine as stones to throw with. And he changed with the African bishops. He has it in for the African bishops. He has it in for the African bishops who told him, you wrote the trust plea here. Homosexuality, for us, culturally and morally, is a sin. So keep this letter in Rome, because here, who knows why, the Vatican sources don't say it, but there's a war going on. Look, there's a risk of a continental schism, because the entire African episcopate says no to the trust plea. Bergoglio is thinking of them. Because that one is someone who, if his refined, cunning, deceitful, misleading thinking isn't conformed to, then he sees it as an obstacle. The sin of doctrine used as stones to throw against. I don't know, dear son. I mean, basically, you meet someone who tells you the Madonna wasn't a virgin. What's your moral duty? What to tell him? I won't tell what Francesco suggested. I throw the tissues, but I make the beds for you then. So what is the obligation you have as a practicing Catholic for a small remainder? If someone tells you the Madonna did not remain a virgin, she conceived with Saint Joseph, right? You have a moral obligation, it's truly a matter of conscience, to respectfully say no, the Madonna is a virgin, first for Pope Francis. You are casting a stone against those who say otherwise, because the entire doctrinal framework must be dismantled and redone. As the water rises to the throat, because we all die, And it seems that, all things considered, thank God, when you really think about it, it must be dreadful for those who have embarked on an adventure. And you see that in the end, when you really get down to it, apart from the power granted to you by the media because they idolize you, it's not like, in the end, all things considered, the appearance has truly changed. It's changed because it's the false church, you know? And so there's anger and therefore there's a plan to pray, but do you go to St. Peter's? Worse for you, are they going to pray after Pachamama? They might be praying, it's not clear which God they're praying to for the sins of this guy here. And if God then strikes us all down when he decides like the lightning on the Basilica of Saint, my dear ones, we can never know. You know, we are like that distracted person. I have someone around me who asks me to pour a glass of water, and they're talking, not realizing that while pouring, they forget. And at a certain point, despite themselves, the water overflows. And that's how it is with the situation we're living in. Humanity, and especially the false church, keeps pouring and pouring. But when the Eternal Father sees that the time has come, there's no one who. And there's another sin I like. The sin against, explain it to me. I need you to help me. The sin against synodality. I'm sorry, I must go to confess. I've committed a mortal sin, which my son accuses me of. I've sinned against immigration. It's the poor priest, the poor Christ who listens to you. What do you mean, my child? I have sinned against, as they say here, I have sinned by using doctrine as a stone to throw against. I have sinned against synodality. What's clear here is 118, understood? But do you realize at what level we are? Everyone enjoy the show. Well, my dear ones, I have concluded.